Missy, I gotta say, last week's episode on Coming to America was a hoot. I can't believe I had not seen it before. It really was such a funny, sweet story.
I know I told you. I can't believe that I didn't just hold you down and make you watch it back then. I remember having that VCR tape and making people watch it. Maybe I just knew you were probably too young. But to me, go ahead.
But I was just about to say, when you said hold me down, my memory flashed back of when you used to hold my nose.
I know.
In the middle of the night when you would come home.
It was just a prank. It was just a prank, sister.
I would wake up because I couldn't breathe and you and Dana were holding me down.
I know, but in just a fun way. It wasn't really violent like it might sound to listeners. But anyway, back to Coming to America. To me, there is just something about Eddie Murphy and those characters that just never gets old. But today, we are shifting gears, huh?
Majorly. We are definitely trading the laughs for a bit of adventure this time. Not a bit of adventure.
Major adventure.
It is a total change of pace for us, especially. But I think our listeners are probably ready for it. Nothing like following up a comedy with something that will keep us on our toes.
I guess you're right. Here we go from the royal palace and the streets of Queens to, well, let's just say we are in for quite a ride today. Ready to dive in and see where this one takes us? I have to say, I'm pretty excited about today's special guest.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy. And this is Real Sisters Rewind.
Join us as we go back to the 80s. Welcome to Real Sisters Rewind, Back to the 80s, a podcast for movie lovers who wish films were as good now as they were back then. If it's your first time joining us, we're two sisters who adore great films, especially the ones from the 80s, and we're here to rewatch and relive some of our best movie memories. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy. And if you're enjoying our podcast, please give Real Sisters Rewind a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Subscribe and review to help new listeners find the show. We're sending out real stickers, aren't we, sister, for those 5-star reviews. So take a screenshot of your review and email it to us at hello@realsistersrewind.com and we'll get you your cool sticker.
That's right, sister. Today, we have a special treat. Not just an adventure movie, but another special treat, real fans. Joining us is my precious brother-in-law, Dr. Chris Washam. Like Indiana Jones, he is also a college professor, and Raiders of the Lost Ark is his favorite movie of the 80s. Chris is here with us today, and he's even brought his very own version of Indiana Jones' hat.
Not only did he bring his hat, he's sporting it. Welcome, Chris, my sweet husband. We are so glad to have you here with us. And let me tell you, if you're listening, Chris is like Wikipedia for Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I always want to call Indiana Jones, which I might, but he is going to share his thoughts, his love for the film, and I'm glad to be discussing this classic with a true fan.
I'm so glad to be here with you girls. It's kind of I guess it's kind of a come down for you though. One week you have an Oscar-winning screenwriter, and the next week you have me. But this is my all-time favorite movie, and in my opinion, it's the best action-adventure movie that has ever been made.
Well, let's get ready to go back in time into the world of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Ready or not, sister? Ready or not? Here we go. All right, before we get into what was going on globally, I want to ask you both, do you remember what you were doing when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out? It was June 12th, 1981. Now, I was about 12, almost 13, and I vaguely remember seeing it in theaters with my friend group, like a boys and girls group, because it's definitely not something that my group of girlfriends would have wanted to see. But so I know I saw it in the theaters, but I wasn't an instant fan, but I did see it. What about you, sister?
I know I didn't see it in the theaters. I was not even quite 5 years
Well, I was
old
going to say,
when
what were you, like 5?
almost 5. So I did not see it in theaters, but it was on HBO. I mean, that was like HBO was like the gateway to movies that I didn't see in the theater as a child. So I did see it on HBO at home. But what really, when I think about this movie, what gets my memories all jumbled up about it is I always think about the stunt show at Hollywood Studios and Disney. And I'm like,
Yes.
wait, was that the stunt show or was that the movie? I
Oh my
can't.
gosh. I'm the same way, Amanda. When I think about Indiana Jones or Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's the same thing to me.
Yeah.
I think about the stunt show at Disney much more than the actual movie.
Yeah, I think it's like hindered my memory of the movie.
I know. All right, Chris, what about you? Do you remember seeing it the first time?
Well, let's see. I was 20. And so for those of you out there
Doing the
doing the
math.
math, I'm significantly older than my lovely bride. But I was actually in a little town called Trinity, Texas in the summer of 1981. I was working as a summer camp counselor. And if you've ever been a summer camp counselor, you know they don't let you out much. But we were, all the kids were, it was like a buzz about this movie, and they just called it Raiders. And we had no idea what they were talking about, but all the kids had seen it. And finally, one evening, some of the counselors got together and said, we need to go see this Raiders movie. And that was and so we went to Huntsville, Texas and saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I guess that's probably, I would conservatively say 50 times that I've seen it, but that's probably the first of about 50 viewings for me.
Wow. And they've been on RTV, many of them, many times. I can hear the music. And I know you have such great memories of that summer. And so I wonder sometimes, I think, hearing you say that, if your love for Raiders has to do with like everything that was going on that summer. It just like made it that much more special to you, do you think? Or it's just for sure the movie?
Missy, would be kind of like Steel Magnolias with us. I mean, we
Yes,
love the
because it was
movie,
around the time I
but
was
also
getting
that time.
married.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I was just lucky enough to be born at a time when Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and all these great Steven Spielberg movies came out when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And they were just awesome, wonderful, exciting movies. And they had not made movies like that in quite a while. So a lot of it was just the times
Yeah.
and the age that I was at that time.
That's why we're going back to the 80s because that's when they're the best.
That's right.
All right. So, what was happening in the world when Raiders of the Lost Ark hit theaters? So, again, it was in 1981. We get another Ronald Reagan tidbit. He was inaugurated as the 40th president of the United States.
And something tells me you're going to mention the Cold War again.
You can't mention the 80s history without the Cold War. So, yes, we've already mentioned.
There you go, real fans. Another Cold War. Here it comes. Here it comes.
There was an escalation at this time of the Cold War.
And what does that even mean? If I ask you to delve into that, are you even going to know?
These guys were 12 and 5. They didn't even know there was a Cold War.
Research.
It was on the news like every night. How could you not know? But I will say, sweet dear Princess Diana was on the cover of People magazine right around this time. But this was cool. This is an interesting fact. She wasn't Princess Diana yet because she was on the cover and they were interviewing her to talk about her big wedding day and the dresses and the gifts and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of broke my heart to see her so young and innocent and just knowing how that story unfolds.
Yeah. You're exactly right. That was that summer because that's the summer that we went to Hawaii, Amanda. And at the Royal Hawaiian, I don't know if you have any memories of this, but at the Royal Hawaiian, they had a whole section of the hotel that they had roped off more like a museum. And they had a replica of the cake and replicas of some of the clothes and crowns. And it was such a part of that trip to Hawaii for me. Like, I'll never forget it. Like, the cake that was supposedly an exact replica was ginormous. It was ginormous.
Did we get just, I mean, I'm thinking about our ages. We went to Hawaii in the summer, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Remember, I
Yeah,
turned
so yeah.
13 in Hawaii. So I'm going to see if we can find a picture of that. I guarantee you in that stack of pictures from Hawaii, there's a picture of it. We'll do that and maybe share on social. But in the music scene, it was buzzing with hits like Betty Davis Eyes. She's got Betty Davis eyes. And one of my favorite songs of all time, Endless Love by Diana Ross and
Endless
Lionel
love.
Richie. I know it. I mean, the early 80s, it was such a great time for music. And there were some new genres hitting the scene, like new wave and hip hop and breakdancing. Breakdancing was really gaining in popularity. And
Wait, there was a movie, Breakin'. I mean, it was like a big deal.
was that in the 80s?
Yes, and they
Oh,
even
okay.
made Breakin' too.
Oh, I didn't see that one, but I'll go back and look at it. But this is cool. MTV was about to launch as well, which, as we know, changed the way we consumed music even today.
Yeah, this is a really big deal. I feel like it's kind of like we were talking about in a previous episode about video games. Like this, for my age, my exact generation, MTV was huge. I almost feel like MTV was to us as phones are to teenagers now.
Mm.
Like our parents didn't really like it, and we watched it. It was on the TV. Like if we had a game room or like in a room away from the family room, MTV was on 24/7.
Mm.
And you know what's really weird is now they don't even really play music videos anymore.
I mean, is it even still a channel?
Yeah.
I don't think they play a lot of videos anymore. It's mostly shows and things like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of breakdancing, did you guys see the breakdancing at the Olympics?
Yes, and I believe it's already canceled for the next summer games. But,
And appropriately so.
well, I can remember trying to break dance back in the day.
Are you for real? Did you really try to break dance?
We all tried to break dance.
Did any of y'all wear parachute pants?
Absolutely, yes.
Because that was very like break dance. That like came out of that.
Because that material, you can slick and slide on it.
And what were those jackets that everybody wore with the parachute pants?
I don't know.
Weren't they bomber jackets?
They look kind of like a bomber jacket.
Members only.
Members only jackets.
Yes, because they could slide too. All right, moving beyond the break dancing.
Well, I have some fascinating facts that you may not know.
I don't know, Wikipedia or
probably so about the movie. So Steven Spielberg, this is kind of mind-blowing knowing what we know about Steven Spielberg now, was initially kind of nervous about Raiders of the Lost Ark because his previous film, 1941, had been a box office disappointment. Wow.
Never heard of it.
I actually liked 1941. But
of course you did. Of course you did.
But I mean, little did he know about E.T. being right around the corner.
You know, actually, the script for E.T. was written during the filming of Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? During breaks, because Melissa Matheson, who was Harrison Ford's then girlfriend, became his wife. And during the breaks and stuff, Steven Spielberg was telling her the story that he wanted her to write the screenwrite.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Good memory.
You know, of course, everybody's heard of George Lucas.
Well, he's a producer on the film.
He was, well, the whole thing was his idea. He was
Oh,
the one
really?
that's, yeah, he suggested to Spielberg, and I believe that they were in Hawaii, actually. Hawaii actually comes back. The movie was partially filmed there, actually, not too long after you were there on vacation, or before you were there on vacation. And they were, I think, celebrating the release of Star Wars, and they were on a beach somewhere in Hawaii, and they started talking about this. George Lucas had this idea for this new type of action hero, and what it was, and none of us remember this, but in the 1930s and 40s, they had serial movies, and kids would go to the movie theater, and for I think a dime or whatever they paid, they would get these serial. You get like a 15-minute serial movie, and they came in installments. Like the following week, you would get the second installment, and then they would have the feature film. But like Superman and Flash Gordon and all these things were serial movies, and he kind of wanted to bring that back to the movies, and that was sort of the genesis for Indiana Jones.
Oh,
That is
interesting.
that is so cool. That's kind of neat about like bringing it back once a week. It's like almost like a TV episode.
Yeah. And don't you know, like kids in those days would look forward to going and seeing that. Okay, so I've
Yeah.
got one. I've got one. I'm sure Chris knows. So Chris, you can just nod your head or give me a thumbs up if you know this. But that famous boulder scene was filmed in a single take. A single take. And Harrison Ford, who of course everyone knows plays Indiana Jones, actually outran a real 300-pound fiberglass boulder for this iconic opening scene. I mean, talk about commitment. Yes, I'll run from a 300-pound boulder.
I wonder, you go ahead, Chris.
He also fell down when he was running from it, and jumped back up and ran, and they
kept going.
It looked so good that they actually left that in the film. He wasn't supposed to fall down.
Well, that's more realistic, but I wonder now if they would let a lead actor even do that.
Probably not, with legalities and all of that.
You know what I would love to know? What was more difficult, him filming this himself in one take, or Jennifer Grey doing the lift with Patrick Swayze in one take?
I know, I was thinking about that when I found that one take little trivia.
Well, here's some more trivia for you girls. Did you know that Harrison Ford was not the first choice for the role of Indiana Jones?
Did not.
I didn't originally, but I did see that when I was researching.
Do you know who the real first choice was? The one that the actor that they originally offered it to?
Tell us.
Oh, okay. Well, it's another one of my favorite actors, Tom Selleck, Magnum.
Magnum PI.
Magnum PI. They offered it to Selleck, but he had just started Magnum PI and was committed to the show, and they wouldn't release him. So he had to turn down the role of Indiana Jones. Also, Spielberg and Lucas had already cast Harrison Ford in Star Wars and American Graffiti, and they really didn't want to overuse him in their movies. So after Selleck turned the part down, they kind of went back to him, said, well, he'd really be the best guy for the film. And so they ended up offering it to him. And he, of course, became, basically a part of pop culture by becoming Indiana Jones.
Yeah, he's still playing it like decades later.
Too bad for Magnum PI. I think it's a good thing, though, because Harrison Ford, I mean, I love Tom Selleck, but he is no Harrison Ford. And also, I didn't know Harrison Ford was in American Graffiti.
Yes.
I don't know that. I don't know that movie that well. So,
yes, he was.
Very interesting. I had no idea that was the case.
Well, Chris knows it, and he loves both those guys. He loved Magnum PI. I don't think I've ever seen an episode. Have you ever seen it, Amanda?
Yeah, well, at home, like Mom watched it, and so I remember it from her watching it.
Oh, really?
I loved Magnum PI. I didn't watch it much in college during the early 80s, but toward the end, I started watching quite a bit of it, and in the final episode of Magnum PI, I'll confess that I actually got a little emotional watching it. It was
got a little wet-eyed.
It was
Old
a little
Magnum.
bittersweet.
Gotcha. All right, well, here is another fun tidbit. The scene where Indy shoots the sword-wielding henchman was not originally in the script. Harrison Ford was actually suffering from a little issue called dysentery. He was having some
Yikes.
tummy attacks. And he suggested instead of doing a long fight that he just shoot the guy. And Spielberg loved the idea. And so it became one of the most memorable moments in the film. And it was definitely one of the parts that made me like have a little laugh out loud. I thought that was funny. It tickled me.
They were
Oh,
filming in Tunisia. That's why they all got sick.
Mm.
The actors were eating the local food.
oh my goodness. Well, okay. You both know because you have lived with me and love me, I'm terrified of snakes. And so the snake pit scene, OMG, OMG, like just, oh my goodness, like even thinking about it, I'll probably have a nightmare tonight. But those were real snakes, y'all. Over 7,000 of them. And they imported them from all over the world because they didn't have enough of them to fill the well of souls, which we'll talk about as we go through the movie.
No way, no way, no way. Would you have gotten in there if they're like, all right, let's shoot this? And they like, would you have done it?
Not for millions of dollars would I have done it.
Really?
No, I'm that terrified.
And not only were there 7,000 snakes in there, but Spielberg decided it didn't look like there were enough snakes. So they went and got little pieces of rubber hose and scattered them all around. So it looked like there were even more snakes.
Yeah, I'm even startled by a piece of rubber hose in the yard. So no, I would not have.
All right, one last fun fact is that I love this. R2-D2 and C3PO from Star Wars make a cameo appearance in this film. You can spot hieroglyphics of them on the wall behind Indy when he's lifting the Ark. And this makes my 80s child heart so happy because I loved them and I had their underoos.
You sported those underoos, sister. I remember that. And they were pretty
I have a
darn cute on
picture.
you.
We'll put it on our Insta. I have a picture of them.
Okay, great. Okay.
Also, if you remember, there's a scene in there where a seaplane picks up Indiana Jones when he's being chased by the natives in South America. The numbers and the letters on the seaplane are OBCPO, which is another Easter egg from Star Wars.
Ah, and Star Wars definitely, I guess, came out before this, or they wouldn't have been doing that. But what was it, like mid to late 70s, 77, 78?
77.
Okay. All right. So some specifics about Raiders of the Lost Ark. It had a runtime of an hour and 55 minutes, and it was rated PG. It was directed, as we've already mentioned, by Steven Spielberg and produced by George Lucas. It was made on a budget of around 18 million and it grossed over 389 million worldwide, becoming one of the highest grossing films of the 80s.
I bet that made Steven Spielberg's 80s heart happy.
You bet it did. He's like, 1941, what?
Well, it also received numerous awards and nominations, including 5 Academy Awards for Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and a Special Achievement Award for Visual Effects, which I think is very deserving. It was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Cinematography, and Best Original Score by the one and only John Williams. And what a trio. Spielberg, Lucas, and Williams. I feel like anyone that watched movies in the 80s knew these 3, almost like household names. They were just really recognizable. Maybe not yet at this point, but a little bit later on down the road for sure.
Yeah.
So do you ladies know what movie Raiders of the Lost Ark lost the Academy Award to?
No idea.
No.
Well, Chariots of Fire. And so how many times have you watched that in the past 40 years?
Zero,
right?
Zero.
Yeah. I mean, Chariots of Fire was a good movie. Don't get me wrong, but it was nowhere as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Isn't that one like choo 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 dun dun dun? Isn't that Chariots of Fire? It's like people running or riding bikes or something.
Is that it? Is that the one, that
Are we
music?
right?
Yes, that's it. They were two runners in the Olympics.
Okay.
When I think of Chariots of Fire, I immediately think of the Hunger Games when she rides it. Wait, what's her name? Katniss rides it on the chariot, and her dress has the fire.
That's funny. But you know what? Thinking about it losing to Chariots of Fire, it's like E.T. losing to Gandhi. I mean, like, I'm sure Gandhi was good, but
it's unacceptable.
E.T. was the biggest movie of the 80s.
You know, Spielberg had lots of disappointments. Most of his really, really famous movies did not win Oscars. I think the first Oscar for Best Picture was Schindler's List, which is obviously the best movie he ever made. I personally think that when Saving Private Ryan lost to Shakespeare in Love, of all things, for Best Picture, that's when I lost all respect for the Academy Awards. I'm glad you mentioned John Williams. The movie, and actually most Spielberg Lucas movies, wouldn't be the same without the music that John Williams created. You know, he created the iconic Indiana Jones March, all the Star Wars themes. You know, all those movies. He scored all of them.
Yeah, his music is so recognizable. As soon as you hear it, you know. Like I've had that experience multiple times where I didn't really know for sure, but I knew, and then I checked and I was like, yep, John Williams.
He also wrote all that Olympic music that you hear when you watch the Olympics on NBC. That was all written by John Williams.
Did he write the Chariots of Fire music?
He did not. Vangelis.
Okay.
A guy named Vangelis wrote that.
Okay.
But John Williams wrote that Olympic theme music for the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
All right. Now that we've set the stage with some fascinating facts, let's dive into the adventure itself and explore why Raiders of the Lost Ark, or as I'd like to just call it, Indiana Jones, why it remains a timeless classic that is loved and beloved by so many.
All right, the movie opens with Indiana Jones, our adventurous archaeologist, navigating through a South American jungle in 1936. Okay, y'all. This already was a big red flag for me, meaning I clearly did not pay attention or didn't understand this movie from previous viewings, because I am not joking. This time was the first time I realized it was set in the 30s. In fact, I had to turn to my husband and be like, wait, this is in the 30s? They're like, yeah.
I did too, Amanda. Yeah, I swear. I was like,
no idea.
Right, yeah.
So as we talk through this, I'll probably share some of those other misunderstandings, because that was not the only one that I had. But anyway, so Indiana Jones is on this mission to reach an ancient temple containing a golden idol. And this is where I got Aladdin Cave of Wonder vibes. I was waiting for them to be like, who disturbs my slumber?
I swear to you, I promise you, I have exactly the same thought. Cave of Wonders.
I mean, it was like the same thing. There was just no Abu.
Where was Aladdin?
But right from the start, from this just opening scene, we get a taste of the intense action and suspense that defines the film. And quite frankly, after this part, I needed a little break.
Yeah, okay, I mean, action indeed.
Okay, so you know how you felt about the Well of Souls and all the snakes?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of the sensation I had when the tarantulas are all over Indiana Jones and the guy that's with him.
Yeah, I saw that.
I have a fear of snakes. Chris has a fear of spiders.
Yeah, I hate spiders. One interesting thing about when the movie starts is that they used the Paramount logo that's used to start the movie of the mountain was not the logo that was being used in 1981. It was actually from the 1940s, because again, George Lucas loved the old time adventure movies of the 30s and 40s, and he wanted it to have that feeling. Also, that mountain that when all the Indiana Jones movies except for the last one, which we won't even talk about, they always have a dissolve from the Paramount logo to some type of mountain shaped thing. And that mountain was in Hawaii, in Kauai. And he actually sent Frank Marshall out to find me a mountain that looks like the Paramount logo. And he went and found this particular mountain. And you can actually go there and have your picture taken at this very same spot they used.
I
Very
love
cool.
all those. Yeah, I love all those details. It makes it like really special. It actually makes me appreciate the movie more. So I'm glad that we're hearing about it. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that.
Okay, so on this mission, the jungle is filled with traps, which of course Indy manages to overcome them, and he even overcomes being betrayed by one of his guides. But when our hero Indy finally reaches the idol, the adventure is not over. He escapes, he's got it, and he thinks he's free, but then his rival, French archaeologist Rene Belloc, am I saying that correctly, honey?
Yes.
Rene Belloc, I'll say it again, is waiting for him outside with a group of native Javitos.
I had I just keep getting these Disney connections, but during this whole time, I told Eric I'm totally getting Jungle Cruise vibes. Like,
Yes, yes.
like a lot of the when they would have like the person that had died jumped out, or I don't know, there were just like a lot of things that reminded me or looked kind of like the Jungle
Yes.
Cruise in this.
Yes.
If you remember, I know Amanda remembers Power Rangers because she actually dressed up like a Power Ranger for our son's birthday when he
Third
was
birthday.
like third birthday.
Yeah.
If you love the Power Rangers movie, there was the bad guy in the Power Rangers movie was Ivan Ooze. Paul Freeman, who's the actor who plays Belloc, was Ivan Ooze in the Power Rangers movie.
Oh, I can remember Michael always saying ooze. He would talk about
Yes.
ooze.
Ivan Ooze. Yes.
Ivan ooze.
Well, Belloc takes the idol and Indy narrowly escapes with his life. Can you believe it? By fleeing to a waiting seaplane. And this opening sequence really sets the tone for the entire movie, showcasing Indy's resourcefulness and the constant danger he faces every step of the way.
And this scene has a snake in it because there's a snake in that dang plane, and Indy is like me. That's the one thing I like about Indy. We see eye to eye on snakes, right? Indiana Jones and I. But I'm going to just tell you, we're like, what, 3 scenes into this movie? And I can already feel myself getting a bit weary and on the edge by all of this action. This isn't my genre. I'm going to go ahead and say that now. But I do love Harrison Ford. And I love that my husband loves this movie.
Before we leave the jungle, I do want to and I think I mentioned this earlier, but all these scenes which were supposedly happening in Peru were actually filmed in Kauai in the Hawaiian Islands. And Missy and I had the opportunity to go to Kauai last month, and took a helicopter ride. And and really very early on in the helicopter ride, the pilot goes and right down there is the river that they filmed Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones was chased by the Jovitos, and the whole place was actually very beautiful. And but that was really exciting for me since this is my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, it was beautiful, but it didn't excite me about the Indiana Jones stuff, but it was absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so he gets away on the airplane and back at the University of Chicago, where Jones teaches.
No. He didn't teach at the University of Chicago. He went to the University of Chicago. He taught at some college in California that they'd never name in the film.
See, Amanda, Wikipedia.
Who knew?
That's right.
Who knew?
Well, he says later on in the movie he was at the University of Chicago where he was a student of Abner Ravenwood, who was Marion's dad.
Okay. I knew something about her dad was in here somewhere. But anyway, it's here that the 2 Army intelligence agents approach Indy and his colleague Marcus Brody, and they reveal that a Nazi message mentioning Abner Ravenwood, Jones's former mentor, and the staff of Ra. Jones realizes that the Nazis are searching for the Ark of the Covenant and that is believed to be hidden in the ancient Egyptian city of Tanis. How did I do with that part, honey?
Excellent.
Okay.
Those Nazis, I tell you what. All right,
They're the best bad guys. They're just
yeah,
awesomely
right.
Because
bad.
they just were bad.
Yeah, it's just easy. It's an easy one. The Ark is said to be a powerful biblical artifact that can make an army invincible. So, of course, they want that. The Nazis need Ravenwood's medallion, which is the headpiece of the Staff of Ra, to pinpoint the location of the Well of Souls, where that is the Ark of the Covenant is supposedly buried. And this sets Indy on a new mission to stop the Nazis. Now, this is where, for me, a lot of the confusion came in. I got the Ark of the Covenant, right? Like, I'm here for that. But all these the Staff of Ra and the medallion, I got lost. I'm like, I don't even know what's happening right now. I was so confused. But I knew I got the whole, we're going for the Ark of the Covenant. I get that.
A lot of the history that was, and Missy knows that I'm a kind of a history buff, but a lot of
anybody that knows you knows you're a history.
I was going to say, I do too. Yeah.
Well, a lot of this stuff was based on real events. I mean, the Ark of the Covenant's in the Bible. It was a real thing. It was, the historical figures discussed when Brody and Indiana were explaining what the Ark was to the Army guys existed. And there is some actual documentation in history that the Nazis did have a fascination for all this, the mythological things and all these kind of odd things, it just
artifacts,
just part of more of their weirdness.
Yeah.
And maybe they thought it would have given them even more power or something. Well, Indiana Jones travels to Nepal to find Ravenwood, but learns from his daughter Marion that her father had died. And
there seemed to be some unresolved relationship issues between these two, right?
Yes, I was actually just going to say that. And there seems to be a little chemistry here, right?
Yeah.
But, and I'm just going to say this. If they had gone into more of that, then maybe they could have grabbed me a little bit more as a fan if there had been a little bit more of a love story.
Same, sister, same.
Yeah. But anyway, Marion has the medallion, and although she's reluctant to part with it, she agrees. Of course, that's after a violent encounter with a Nazi agent, Tote. Am I saying that right, honey? Tote?
I think so. Tote.
Tote. You say Tot.
He's horrible.
Tote. He is horrible. He tries to seize the medallion. So when he goes to grab it, he ends up burning his hand, and that heated metal leaves an imprint on him. So now he's branded.
Which I totally missed that the first couple times I saw the movie. I did that, of course.
Wow.
That's where they get the design for the headpiece.
Oh, okay.
And I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one that missed it. So Indiana Jones and Marion escape with the medallion by the skin of their teeth and headed to Cairo, where they meet Jones's friend, Sella, who helps them interpret the medallion's markings. And while they're exploring the marketplace, wouldn't you know, Marion gets kidnapped and seemingly killed in the explosion. Now, Jones is grief-stricken, but not that grief-stricken. I mean, he seems to have a pretty quick turnaround. He's like, oh, no, but he gets over it pretty quick.
Again, like no deep love story drama here. I
Totally
could have connected to that.
Totally.
He had more important things to do.
Well, obviously, he was back to it pretty quick, and he confronts Belloc, who is now working with the Nazis.
This, of course, this is where Indy's famous encounter with the swordsman that Amanda mentioned earlier takes place. And I think she mentioned that many members of the film crew, including Harrison Ford, were extremely ill from food poisoning at the time. This film was done in remote location was Tunisia. They ate local food, got sick. The only one that didn't get sick was Steven Spielberg because he brought suitcases full of SpaghettiOs with him, and he only ate that, so he never got sick.
Oh, wow.
I knew Steven, I'll just call him Steven, because I believe we would be friends. Steven and I are kindred spirits because SpaghettiOs were my meal choice in the 80s. We have that 80s heart.
And we used to have SpaghettiOs every single time Mom and Dad would go out on date night, and a babysitter would come over, and right outside where the fireplace and the wood box was,
we could sit at the brick.
We would sit at the bricks, and we didn't have to eat at the table. We could sit at the bricks and watch TV while we ate our SpaghettiOs.
I remember it like, I remember like it was yesterday.
So Salah's children rescue Indy from a dangerous situation. The kids come in and save the day, and they later discover that the Nazis have miscalculated the height of that staff of Ra due to their incomplete understanding of those medallion markings. Now, this gives Indy and Salah a chance to find the real location of the Well of Souls.
And thank God for a closed caption, because that's another thing about these movies from the 80s. Sometimes it's hard to hear. And I was like, at least I could read what they were saying to get some of it, because like I said, I was kind of confused. And in some ways I felt like this whole search was like I was playing on my Nintendo back in the 80s. I was playing like a game of Zelda because I was trying to put all the pieces together.
You know, we said earlier, you agreed that you didn't really catch it, that when Tot burned his hand, it made the imprint of the medallion on his hand. And but they only had one side. And so the reverse side of the medallion said, take away one kadam or whatever the measurement was, to honor the Hebrew God whose ark this is. And that's why their staff was the wrong length. So that's why they couldn't find the ark, and Indiana Jones did. Also, there's another little snippet here that you may not notice. When Tot, who is Tote, arrives at the dig site, he gives the Nazi salute and says, but instead of saying Heil Hitler like they were supposed to, he says Heal Hitler, and that was actually intentional. In like a dig at Hitler, and he didn't really want to say Heil Hitler. And so, but supposedly the guy that played him was just a super, super nice guy, and it was really hard for him to be that horrible.
Yeah, he wasn't going to say it.
I have a question. How, backing up to what you told us at the beginning, where you said about the burn on his hand and the other side of the medallion, like, how do you know that? Is that in the movie and I just totally missed it? Or did you read that somewhere? Like, how do you even know that?
No, when they're in the room with the guy that's telling them what the medallion says, he flips it over and says, and take away one kadam to honor the Hebrew. So, and that's when Indiana Jones and Salah go, their staff's too long. They're digging in the wrong place, and he throws the date. Now, here's something that I didn't notice until the end. He throws the date up in the air, and Salah catches it. It was poisoned, and that's why the monkey was dead. And he knew that it was poisoned because he saw the monkey dead on the floor.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
So somehow the first few times I saw that, I missed that.
That was Abu. There's the Abu character.
There's Abu. Yes, for the Cave of Wonders.
Oh, well, that was the late Abu.
Yes, the late Abu. Thank you for explaining, because I knew I missed something there. Well, Jones and Salah infiltrate the Nazi dig and locate the map room. Using the correctly measured staff, Jones identifies the Well of Souls and starts their own excavation. They eventually do unearth the Ark. However, their victory is short-lived, of course, as Belloc and the Nazis seize the Ark and trap Indy and Marion. Actually, they push her into there. They drop her down into the snake-infested Well of Souls. And I kind of feel like Belloc is the Newman of Raiders of the Lost Ark, like Newman from Seinfeld.
Yeah,
like it's always Belloc.
Yes. Newman. It's Belloc. It's Belloc again.
Like it's him every
hysterical.
time.
Yes. And
Here's another little trivia thing.
okay.
The pilot of the plane that that Marion whacks on the head was actually Frank Marshall, one of the producers. Whoever was supposed to do that part, I think, got sick, and so he took his place. So he got to be in the movie as well.
Okay. Well, speaking of that plane, Chris, old Indy and Marion, they managed to escape that well of souls and they witnessed the Nazis preparing to transport the Ark by plane. And so, in a daring move, Indiana Jones fights a Nazi mechanic while Marion fends off soldiers using the plane's machine gun. They destroy the plane, preventing the Ark's immediate departure.
This gave me major flashbacks to the stunt show at Hollywood Studios. They do this, don't they?
Yes, you totally took the words out of my mouth, sister.
Okay,
yes.
as I was watching, I was like, wait, I think I've seen this at Hollywood Studios.
I have a question for you, though, honey. You talked about Frank Marshall. Is he any kin to like Penny Marshall and Gary Marshall? Like I know them.
No, but I think he's married to Kathleen Kennedy, or was married to Kathleen Kennedy, who was another one of the Spielberg's producers. Like, she did a bunch of movies. I can't think of what all they are. And the big bald guy, the mechanic that Indiana Jones fights at the airplane was his name was Pat Roach, and he was also one of the guys in Marion's bar at the beginning of the movie. So he actually got killed twice in an Indiana Jones movie.
Oh wow!
And he also, if you watch the Temple of Doom, which was the next Indiana Jones film after this one, he was the sadistic, thuggy slave driver down in the catacombs in the Temple of Doom, and he met another really horrible death in that movie as well. So he got killed a lot and in terrible ways.
Ooh.
That's interesting. I bet he was very much like a character type actor and was like, oh yeah, I'll do it. He probably loved that, being known for that. Well, the Ark is then loaded into a truck headed to Cairo. Jones gets on horseback and he pursues the convoy. He's not letting them get away. And in a thrilling, well, what some would call a thrilling chase, he commandeers the truck, and this chase scene is one of the most iconic moments in the film. It is full of action and tension, and it is a lot. I kept thinking at some point, they need to give this guy a break. Like, he needs a rest. I need a rest.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I kept thinking, is it ever going to end? But Jones and Marion, along with the Ark, they board a ship headed to England. But their journey is interrupted when a Nazi submarine intercepts them. And Jones hides on board and follows the submarine to a secret Nazi island base.
But hold on, sister, because this is another part where they could have drawn me in. Wasn't there a little romance on the boat? Like in their room or something? There was like a sneak peek into their love life. And I was here for it, but it just wasn't enough.
I know. I'm literally drowning in all the action here.
That the submarine that they used in this movie, there was a movie this came out around the same time as Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's called Das Boot, which I think it was made in Germany, but it was about a German submarine crew in World War II. They actually borrowed their submarine to make this movie. And
oh wow!
And the underground submarine base was an actual, real World War II underground Nazi Germany submarine base in France. They went there and filmed those scenes in that.
Das Boot. Sister, should we put that on our rewind list? Das Boot?
Das Boot? No, absolutely not.
All right,
I think it's in German with subtitles. I don't think you would.
Definitely.
You can screen that one for us first, Chris.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it.
I guarantee you, sister, I guarantee you, it's on his mind now. He's going to try and find that movie and watch it. All right, let's get going. Let's continue.
Well, I do have to say, I think it's cool. Like, that authenticity is really cool. Like, that's neat.
Yeah.
Well, so after they are captured by the submarine and they get to the island base, Jones disguises himself as a soldier and he infiltrates the base and threatens to destroy the Ark with a rocket launcher. But Belloc knows that Jones will not destroy this priceless artifact, and he calls his bluff.
Calls his bluff.
Jones and Marion are captured again, and tied up as Belloc conducts a ceremonial opening of the Ark. He had to know this wasn't going to go well. I don't know what he was thinking.
That scene where Belloc, where Indy threatens to blow the Ark up with the rocket launcher, includes the most famous fly in movie history. If you watch it very carefully, when Belloc's talking to Indiana Jones, a fly lands on his lip and is crawling across his lip, and then it vanishes like he ate it. And so everybody thought, that he ate the fly during the movie. But in truth, what happened was they thought it was funny, so they cut out a couple of frames of the film. So the fly actually flew off, but they cut the frames out so it just vanishes, so it looks like it went in his mouth.
Oh my gosh. I totally thought he ate that fly when I watched it.
Oh, you saw it.
I don't remember. It was just an accident. Oh, it totally caught my attention, that scene, because I'm like, oh, there's, like, get it off your lip. And then all of a sudden it was gone. I'm like, he ate
the fly. I got to go back and look at that. Okay.
All right. So
crazy.
Y'all, it is. When the Ark is opened, it appears to contain only sand. Wah, wah. However, taking the action to a whole nother level, ghostly spirits emerge, turning into deadly manifestations. This scene, it's both eerie and, the supernatural forces are wreaking havoc, so it makes your skin crawl. They kill Belloc and the Nazis in really gruesome ways. I can't handle it, y'all. Seriously, I can't.
Can you say face melting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. It was gross. Well, Jones and Marion, don't worry. They keep their eyes closed to avoid looking at the spirits to survive the ordeal. And I'm like, how
did the medallion tell them to do that or what? Right. Like, how did they even know not to look?
No. Indiana Jones was a history professor, and he knew from the Bible the story of Lot's wife in the book of Genesis. She was told not to look back and watch God's wrath during the destruction of Sodom. But she did anyway, and you know what happened to her? She was turned into a pillar of salt. So Indy knew his biblical history, and he didn't want Marion to end up as a pillar of salt and sprinkled on somebody's popcorn.
Well, I'm glad you knew this, because I was like, why is this working? How do they know to close their eyes? Like, what? But is that a reference that you're like, I don't want to say assuming, but that, like, as a movie buff, like a lover of this film, you know that? Or is that like really, you think, or is that?
I think I read it somewhere.
Okay. Because I'm like, how would you come to that conclusion? I don't know. But that's cool.
He told her not to look. And so
yeah.
And the assumption is that since he was a history professor, he knew you weren't supposed to watch God's wrath take place.
Well, that makes sense. That's cool.
And that was God's wrath. I mean, all that was.
Right. Yeah. Right.
They got what was coming to them. Well, we're finally back in Washington, D.C. And government agents, well, us in the movie, like, we are, all of us.
They were.
So then, therefore, we were back in Washington, D.C.
They were actually on the steps of the City Hall in San Francisco, but well.
For the movie purposes.
For the movie, they were in Washington, D.C. And the government agents assure Jones and Brody that the Ark is being studied. However, in reality, the Ark is sealed in a crate and stored in a massive anonymous government warehouse filled with countless other crates. And the final scene leaves us with a sense of mystery and awe.
And also a sense of, like, I feel like at that time that would be true, but now in the time we're living in, I kind of was like, yeah, that's probably right. There's probably a warehouse like that. That tracks.
Where they say they're going to study something. Well, when we get to it, we'll.
Yeah, like I was like, yeah, that tracks. They just have it in a warehouse.
Originally, when they did the first cut of the movie, when Indiana asked the intelligence officer who was studying the Ark, and the guy said top men, the film would immediately cut to the warehouse workers storing the Ark, and that was the end of the movie. Then Spielberg realized the last time we had seen Marion was on the island, and that their relationship needed some closure. So the actors were actually brought back to film that next to last scene where they're on the steps of the government building in Washington, which was actually, like I said earlier, the San Francisco City Hall. And it was actually done after the movie had already been completed. And then they stuck that in there so that they could bring closure to their relationship. Interestingly enough, that crate shows up again in the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull movie, where they're in a big giant warehouse full of boxes, where the alien's body was stored, and you see the very same box.
I don't see the same box again because I don't see Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. But for those of you who do, look for the crate, right?
Look for the crate.
Well, take my advice. Just stop on the third one. You'll be fine if you don't see the last two.
We'll have to continue on then. Well, the ending perfectly sets up the mystique, speaking of, for Indiana Jones and his world. Raiders of the Lost Ark remains a timeless classic because of its thrilling adventure, memorable characters, and iconic scenes for movie lovers that are also adventure lovers.
Yeah, I would say for sure the combination of action and some of the humor around the action and the historical intrigue, it makes this film a standout in that genre, that adventure genre. And so it's no wonder that Indiana Jones has become such a beloved character to so many people. My husband and I think both of my boys for sure as well.
Of course, this was the first of a franchise of what eventually now is 5 movies. The second movie, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, came out in the mid-'80s, I think around 1984. And that movie was a lot different. It was a lot darker in tone. Some people say that Spielberg was having some relationship issues. I think he was going through a divorce or something like that. He made the movie a lot darker, and that was not as well received. I liked it, and I still think it's a great movie. Spielberg actually ended up marrying the girl in Indiana Jones's love interest in that movie, Kate Capshaw.
They're still together today, I think.
Yes, they are.
Wait a minute. Marion doesn't go on to be his love interest after this movie?
Well, she comes back later on. Toward the end, like the 1988 or 89, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was the third movie in the series. Sean Connery played Indiana Jones' dad, and a lot of people consider this to be the best of all the Indiana Jones movies. It really is a fantastic movie. The last 2 movies that have come out in recent years have received very mixed reviews from Indiana Jones fans. With an aging Indy and kind of mixed reviews on those. Not my favorites, certainly.
Yeah. So
there was also a television series in the 90s called Young Indiana Jones, which is Spielberg was the executive producer on that, and it was very, very well done, and it's actually considered to be canon with the other Indiana Jones films.
all right, so here's the question, Chris, we always ask as we watch each movie. So focusing on the first one, the one we just went through, does this movie stand the test of time? In other words, how does it survive? How do we see it now?
I think the best evidence that it does is the fact that yesterday it was on national television, and it was on the week before, and it continues to be shown. It is a classic movie. It's in my opinion, it's up there with Gone with the Wind and Citizen Kane. It is people will be watching this movie 100 years from now.
Sister?
That's an interesting point, because I was in my mind, and obviously I'm a little this isn't my very favorite. I was like, oh, I don't know if it stands test of time because it is a little hokey and some of the action scenes and stuff like s- don't I don't know look as good as technical movie scenes do now or whatever. Um but I think you have to give it that grace because kind of like with ET, there were some things that, would look a lot different now if they created ET now than then. But I do think there's something to be said for what they did at the time. And what Chris just said, I think changes my mind. He's right. Like people still watch and love the movie today. It's still really loved and still shown.
And I have a great point. As we were preparing for this podcast, your daughter, our niece Madison, came in. She had no idea what we were about to do. Chris is sitting there sporting his Indiana Jones hat, which is really just a hat, and Chris wears hats all the time. But Madison, a 16-year-old girl in the year 2024, said, Uncle Chris looks like Indiana Jones. So
100. That is such a great point.
it is standing the test of time. I think especially for people who love that genre of movies.
Mhm.
I think you're right, Chris. It's a classic.
One thing people don't think about Spielberg movies is they're kids' movies.
Yeah.
Star Wars was a kids' movie.
Yeah.
E.T. was a kids' movie. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a kids' movie.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why people like them so much. I think these days they were targeted at young people.
They speak to the kid in all of us.
I was going to say, like for kids at heart too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And pretty clean. I mean, I know there was the violence, but it's not. I mean, it's different.
Well, it was cartoon violence.
Yeah.
And some of the other things in it were kind of disguised in a way that you didn't really, there wasn't anything really offensive or inappropriate for children in these movies.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that were my age that are my age. Like I guess I wasn't quite 5 yet, but I have some that were around my age. Maybe they were 6 or 7, and some of their first memories of their life of going to the movies was with their dad to see Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And they're funny. And the Raiders of the Lost Ark is funny. It has a lot of humor in it. One of the things a lot of people don't like about the last 2 Indiana Jones movies is they're so gloomy and he's like a grumpy old man and there's so little humor in them. There was a lot of humor in this movie. And
I agree. There were times that I laughed for sure. Well, if you haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark in a while, it is definitely worth a rewatch. Even if nothing else, just to go back and look at some of the things we've talked about today and see if you can catch some of those cool things that Chris pointed out to us. And if you've never seen it, what are you waiting for? Dive into this adventure and experience the magic of Indiana Jones. But rest up first because it's kind of exhausting.
It is exhausting. Well, thanks for joining us, Chris. We've loved having you on here. All right, it's time for some clues for our next movie, sister.
All right, get ready for a shift from the action-adventure genre to a movie that created a breakout role for one of the world's biggest movie stars.
One of my favorite actors, I might add. Our next film is a coming-of-age story from 1983.
And it is a movie that is known for one particular iconic dance scene.
Which makes the whole movie for me. And one last hint, our movie focuses on an entrepreneurial journey of sorts. Chris, any guesses?
Well, I think I might have an idea.
Okay, well, don't say it out loud. You can tell me later. I'll tell you if you're right.
All right, real fans, do you think you know what it is? Tune in next week to find out if you're right.
Thanks for joining us on this adventurous journey through Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't forget to follow us on social media and share your thoughts about the movie.
And remember, if you love our podcast, please leave us a review and spread the word.
Bye now.
Bye. Love y'all.
Bye, sister. Bye, Chris.